Captain, we have them! We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello, and welcome to Transporter Lock, a once-in-a-while podcast about Star Trek and Star Trek, really new Trek. I am Captain Sabriel Maston as we drift out here in space without a warp core. And as usual, I am joined by Chief Engineer Ken Gagne. Hello, Ken.
You know, I must not be doing my job because I don't think we've ever had a warp core.
Surprise. But I figured this is a problem for future us.
That's right. We've been doing this podcast for 5 years now, and we've just been drifting the whole time.
Well, I don't know about that, but I was thinking, we never actually named this. We just kind of generally said the podcast was the ship or station or whatever. And I'm like, wow, we never actually named this thing besides Transporter Lock.
Should we be like the USS Transporter Lock?
And USS Fargo? No.
Why? It's a North Dakota class ship.
It's a very flat ship. Anyway, we are here to talk about some Lower Decks and a little bit of Prodigy and see if it's caught my interest yet.
It's Star Trek. How could it not be interesting?
Well, we can talk about that in a bit. So I was thinking for a change, we would break the stereotype of podcasts and not do the let's jump in, do it 20 minutes later, and actually just jump in.
Stunning. We're only a minute 35 in, and we're already talking about what the show's about.
I figured, wow, for once I'm going to try this efficiency thing, and if it doesn't work out next time, we can wait to a half hour in.
I mean, if you really want to be efficient, you'll just get me off the show. Monologues are very efficient.
So, speaking of good segues that you just gave me, Lower Decks. And bad segues. Lower Decks. We talked about maybe just talking about the finale here, because we were going to record before and we had some scheduling issues, and I think the finale is actually the last couple episodes. So the finale here, the episode's title was called "The Stars at Night." Before that was Trusted Sources. Lower Decks season 3 is over. Ken, do you have how did you feel about it? What did you like? Like the short answer, we can talk about that more in a minute.
Yeah, I would say that Lower Decks of the 5 new Star Treks out there is probably like my third favorite. And that's not because it isn't great, but because it's competing with Discovery and Strange New Worlds, which are both phenomenal. But Lower Decks is something I really look forward to every week. It's a fun way to spend a Thursday night. It doesn't require a lot of thought. It's fast. It's funny. We're really getting to know the characters after so long, which I always feel like we did, but I'm actually seeing a little bit of evolution of the characters. They actually are. I know this is probably a lot more than the 1 to 10 words that you probably expect of me, but
it's all one breath that counts.
Well, some things get resolved too quickly, and I've complained about that before, like the season opening. But then they also have these little threads that they keep going back to, like Rutherford's implant and Tendy's piratical history. And I like that they have those other elements that come and go. So, yeah, I'm digging Lower Decks. How about you?
Yeah, season 3 here, I'm loving it. I wish I could go back to season 1. Me, like we were both kind of like, who is this for?
Right.
And now this is like probably since you put it in a scale, this is probably my second favorite right behind Strange New Worlds.
You like this more than Discovery?
Yeah.
Wow.
I am loving Lower Decks. Like now, a lot of times during my workday, I'll put on Star Trek Live that Paramount Plus does, and if it's Lower Decks, I just leave it on, even if I've seen the episode a million times. Yeah, I love it so much.
I do feel like the third season was maybe less funny than the first two, but that was in exchange for better plots and more character development. It's kind of like how the Orville was billed as a sci-fi comedy, and it opened with a heavy emphasis on the comedy. And as the show continued, it transitioned to more emphasis on the sci-fi, to the show's betterment, I think. And I
Yeah,
feel like sometimes Lower Decks is making a similar drift.
I can see that. I can absolutely see that. And like it's I think over time, it's less and less of Leo pointing at the screen meme of well, there are always a million references. The first season, especially, but over time they've gotten fewer. Oh, that's the thing from that episode. That's the other thing, and um, but yet you still get the times where like even in the finale or next to the finale, trusted sources. Mariner, she's like, it's just some kind of weird like frame of mind fever dream, like completely referencing the name of the episode that Riker is stuck in his head. They make those kind of jokes all the time too, because we know what those mean.
Yeah, that was really breaking the fourth wall, or the reference to. So you think there's like a parallel universe where younger people are playing us? Like that sounds pretty out there.
Oh my gosh, that episode, Crisis Point 2 Paradoxus, was brilliant.
I love that episode. It's so great that they can do a holodeck episode that isn't about the holodeck going wrong or
Well, there's
getting
that too.
people trapped. Like it is exactly what it's supposed to be. It's a place to live out your fantasies and maybe as therapy to work through things that you can't outside the holodeck.
I think the therapy point is great, and I also love just the special effects they use in the show. They made it look like a film grain, like a TNG era. Um, at one point, Mariner even steps over the black bars that they have in theaters as she steps into or out of the holodeck. Um, just like the little touches like that, or the weird. I saw a Twitter thread about it. How special effects are always put in post back there in the film era, and so they even change like how like when their time hole or whatever they called it again is appearing when everyone jumps out of it, it's a completely different type of background that they use even in the cartoon. So it looked like the film grain. Like just these tiny little minor details that was just beautiful chef's kiss.
And those are things that I don't think I consciously notice. I've pointed out before that you have an eye and ear for detail that I sometimes miss. But even if I'm not noticing it, that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate it.
Like the black bar thing is my favorite. Stepping over the movie black bar.
Yeah, yeah. Are you talking about like the letterbox?
Yeah,
Or
letterboxing. Thank you. Yeah, yeah.
you know what? I again, now that you mention it, I can picture that scene, but I didn't consciously like say,
Catch
"Oh,
what
hey,
they're
look
doing.
look at what they're doing."
Uh-huh.
That's smart.
Beautiful. But and then like trusted sources where we got the news, the FNN from Generations, back again. And this was the most tropey episode to me of the entire series, where like no one believes Mariner. Everyone's like assume Mariner caused a lot of problems, and we saw like this is the breakup of our season long relationship between her and Jennifer. We get basically no one believes Mariner, and she's kicked out the ship, which is a callback to like the first or second episode. So like, we had the season long arc, and I thought that was a fun little way to tie it up in Jumping into Stars at Night, where she is a not bounty hunter. What's the word I'm looking for? Archaeologist, with quotes, space archaeologist.
Yeah, I like that she had the opportunity to experience life outside of Starfleet. But to your point about the relationship, I thought the resolution between she and her mom just went a little too quickly. Like, I know that Mariner said, "Okay, I spent the last 2 years giving you every reason to believe that that was my fault. So that's my bad, and I'm willing to turn over a new leaf." But still, her mom said some pretty awful things. Like, "I'm not ready to have you on my ship. I'm not sure I'm okay calling you my daughter. I'm sending you to Starbase 80." Those are three pretty powerful things.
Oh yeah, yeah. I also Lower Decks. So if you want to talk about her relationship with her mother, I mean, it's always had that. Um, I hate you, I love you, I hate you, I love you thing. And to me, like I didn't crave that apology between them. To me, it added nothing not having it because I don't know. It's just like that's not what the series has usually been. Um, outside of like I don't know. To me, it's always just been the on again, off again with her mother. I really didn't. It didn't bother me at all.
But you agree that some resolution was necessary between them.
Yeah, they
After
just
all
said,
those
"I'm
things.
sorry." Yeah,
Okay.
okay. That was good enough for me.
Do you think that we should have seen something similar between Mariner and Jennifer?
Eh. I mean, I would always love to see more queer relationships, but nah. I mean, Jennifer clearly was done with it after Trusted Sources, and then by the time Mariner's back in Stars at Night, she doesn't even acknowledge Jennifer. And goes right to her friends, like, okay, yeah, it's over. And if there's a makeup between seasons, cool. But if there's not, whatever.
I'm just wondering if Mariner can forgive her mother. Can't she use that same reason to forgive Jennifer? Like, okay, I'm a jerk. I can be a jerk, so that's my bad.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it could happen. It basically depends on what the speed of plot is if they're going to stay together. I mean, it was such the only time it only came up twice during the episode that they were even a couple or the season, and so like it was not a major thing.
Yeah.
And that's how they treat it in Lower Decks.
And Jennifer did look a little either embarrassed or regretful when
Oh
Mariner
yeah,
came back, as well she should. So I'm glad they at least acknowledged that.
yeah. And I mean, a lot of heck, it's interesting. A lot of the relationships are the background characters, and just watching how they react to the characters who are talking.
Hmm.
That's how that's how Jennifer was for last season and this season. Um, yeah, so, whatever. I would love it if they get back together, but I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds like a very normal resolution to me. If they don't,
There are at least 3 points in the last 4 episodes that I want to discuss with you, and I'm picking out the 4 episodes because those are the ones that have aired since the last episode of Transporter Log with that
Mhm.
Enfys was on. First, what did you think about the episode focusing almost exclusively on Peanut Hamper?
I was like, wow, all right, finally a redemption. Oh, okay. Uh, that's lower decks for you. She doesn't. I
Yeah.
was like, I was happy, and I was like, this is also going the very tropey episode. And then I was I think at first viewing I was let down. I was like, oh, but then I went to the second viewing. Yeah, that's lower decks. um, how about you?
This was one of the few episodes that actually made me a little uncomfortable. I found the sexual humor was
I,
unprecedented in Lower Decks. What, are you
I
laughing
mean,
because I'm a
hold on.
prude?
No, I'm laughing because I knew you're gonna say that, but also like we saw Boimler's junk in the season two. So,
Yeah, but there was a black bar over it,
I mean, actually, we saw the entire cruise junk in
and it was a
season two.
holodeck.
But I was when I had the bird and the hexagon. I was like, yep, they're going there. Yep,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah,
And I was
yeah.
like, I'm here for it.
I'm glad one of us was. I did like the ending though, where they paired Peanut Hamper with Jeffrey Combs.
Yes, and I wonder if that's what's controlling the AI computer. if if our Badmiral tapped into the evil computer lab.
Ooh, oh, that's a good idea.
Or Badgie probably should have been put there, but wasn't.
Right, right. Well, that ties into the season finale where we, we got to see Badgie again, the remnants of Badgie, which is a season 1 callback. He wasn't in season 2 or up until now season 3 at all. So we don't know where they're going with that or who is trying to resurrect Badgie.
Yeah, or if they decide to go with that at all anyway.
Right, it could just be one of the many loose ends that Star Trek never ties up.
It's funny, interesting. I was talking to my friend and friend of the show, Shar,
Mm-hmm.
that this season actually felt like the resolution of a number of little things that have come up over the course of the show, especially, but the big one being Rutherford and his
Yes.
um it's like resolution is maybe a strong word, but it tied up a lot of things. I don't know if they were like just in case or whatever. It just felt like that, even if it didn't actually tie up a bunch. We got Boimler being stronger. We got Mariner mom making up a little bit more. We got Rutherford, Tendi. We really didn't get much. We've had her, I guess, this season, trying to work towards officer stuff. But yeah, the season just felt like let's close up some of these just in case. But but I think we're doing all right.
There is going to be a season 4, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, there is now. We know that for sure. Did you see the stinger at the end of the credits? It stars at night. There was a stinger. Or not a stinger, whatever the thing is that, show at the very end. After the
Remind me.
credits. Post-credit scene, that's the word I'm looking for.
Maybe I didn't see it.
Um, we're showing just a wreckage in space.
Oh yeah,
like Rutherford's eyepiece, and some green beam starts, like a tractor beam starts pulling it towards it, and Badgie appears on the screen of Rutherford.
yeah, that's why I just said we see Badgie. We saw Badgie come back, but I was actually a little confused why the AI powering the Alito ship would be the same as what's in Rutherford's eye implant.
I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I'm supposed to was the exact same. All we know is that badass racer Rutherford made a program. Something blew up. Our Admiral took it, stole it, and then I don't remember what happened into season 1, was it, where this Badgie thing got in there?
Well, Badgie appeared twice in season 1, and then at the end of season 2 is when Rutherford first had
Used
the flashback of somebody
messing with it,
installing the implant.
I'd have to go back and watch those finales to again to remember exactly, but I'm sure. But also, sure, Badgie hiding in the eye implant. Okay, I mean, I can see just doing it.
Well, I think that's how they did it in season 1. I think
I trust it. Yeah.
Yeah, they put Badgie in the eye implant and sent him over there or something, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, because I remember at the end of season 1, Rutherford didn't have his implant and had to have a new one installed.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's confusing. I don't understand the correlation between all these technologies and how they tie together.
Rutherford's just an AI person. I think we got two different things going on here. Badgie was still alive inside the broken implant thing.
Yep.
But then, but Rutherford is good at AI, and so he had made a new thing and probably used a lot of the code that he had originally. Maybe just this Admiral stole a copy of it and then changed it.
Did the Admiral steal it, or was Racer Rutherford working with / for the Admiral?
I don't think we know for sure, but I think the implication is working with / for.
That's what I assumed as well. So why would the Admiral erase his memory just because something blew up?
If you think too hard into it, you're probably doing more than they did.
I remember this interview.
He's a Admiral. They do bad stuff.
I remember this interview that Mark Hamill did a couple years ago, where he was talking about when they were filming the original Star Wars Episode 4, and they were shooting the scene where they had just come out of the trash compactor. Like, they shot that before the scene where they went into the trash compactor. And he said, well, wait a minute. If we just came out of the trash compactor, shouldn't we have, like, smush in our hair and stuff rather than looking as clean as we do? And Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill does a great Harrison Ford impression. I don't. But Mark Hamill said that Harrison Ford said that, he said, hey, kid, it's not that kind of movie. If people are looking at her hair, we're doing something wrong. Like, oh, okay. So if I'm thinking about Lower Decks too hard, it's not that kind of show, and I'm probably doing it wrong.
Possibly. Also, we just might not know yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure we'll see more of Badgie, and that may have additional implications.
Mm-hmm. Oh, go for it.
Maybe we're going to say the same thing, because I said there were 3 things I wanted to ask you about. I only got through one so
particles. I was excited to see the space station. That was like the huge ones like we have outside of Earth, actually in combat. And then it only got to shoot like 1 phaser or 2 phasers before it was taken out. But
oh yeah, yeah, they're useless.
See it in combat. We've never seen one of those things fire anything ever before. So I was like, that was neat. They basically gave it turrets like DS9 had.
Wasn't it in the very first episode of DS9 where Commander Sisko said, like, activate the engines, and O'Brien's like, what engines? We're a space station.
They had maneuvering thrusters to just make sure the station stayed in right orbit around Bajor.
Right. But I think they were trying to move the station closer to the wormhole.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they eventually did, but it wasn't as easy as Sisko thought it would be.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was like, cool. They had the phaser turrets that DS9 later got on the station.
Finally. We had a really, really cool guest star in the anti-penultimate episode in Crisis Point 2 Paradoxes.
Oh, thank you. I could have just said that.
Why
In
use a small...
the pre-post doctorate penultimate.
Why use a small word when a big one will do, Sabriel? So when Boimler finds himself basically in the ribbon, and he's at Kirk's farm.
Oh yes,
we get to see Hikaru Sulu.
That's right.
Now, I think this is the first time we've had original dialogue from an original series actor on Lower Decks.
Yeah, no, actually, I think it is because most of them are dead now.
Yeah, there's that. But yeah, that was... So I thought when he first showed up in the Nexus that we were going to see William Shatner, because that's exactly what they want us to believe. We even see Kirk's name on the mailbox and everything. Were you surprised that it wasn't Shatner, and were you surprised that it was Sulu?
More like I was surprised it was Sulu. I didn't know where they're going to go with it. It's Lower Decks. So, I mean, because like I said, it is also very much Leo pointing meme. It's like, okay, they're referencing generations here. What's actually going to be here is often my look, not, oh, this is exactly what it is. No, it's usually how are they going to twist this? It's usually when I see a scene in Lower Decks.
Yeah, I love Sulu's lines. My favorite two being like, that is exactly what I just said when Boimler tries to rephrase it. And then he basically says, Horsey is going to bite you now. Like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine that Sulu ever predicted he would be saying these lines in a canon Star Trek production.
I mean, you see a lot of weird lines in normal Star Trek too.
Oh, I mean, this is true. And I am happy with these lines. I'm not saying they were beneath him or anything. It's just, it's, Lower Decks is just a slightly different kind of Star Trek.
It is. But also we also had Leonard Nimoy saying, "They are not the hell your whales."
It's true. Yeah, Star Trek 4. I need to rewatch that. That was just such a wonderful movie. It was a comedy that happened to also be Star Trek.
Very Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah. And then there was a third thing. The third thing is, again, this is me overthinking. This is me being unable to suspend my disbelief, but The Stars at Night, the finale. First of all, awesome tie-in to Admiral Picard. I love that. But secondly, so they're on this archaeology ship, and it's on the news that the Cerritos is under attack by the Alito. So everybody knows because it's all on the news, but Starfleet isn't doing anything about it until Mariner goes around and says, "Hey, everybody, can you come please help the Cerritos that's under attack and whose location I know exactly?" And they all say, "Oh, sure, since you asked nicely, now we'll help."
Do we know that?
Well, we know that Mariner said, "Yeah, I brought help. I brought all of them." So we know that the California class is there because she brought them. But it seems like if she hadn't called them, the California class would have done nothing.
All right. Space is really, really big. Like, astronomically big. Like, you might think it's a long way to the chemist, but that's nothing compared to space. Hitchhiker's Guide.
Okay, I was wondering what you were quoting.
Or something very close to it anyway. Yeah, suspend your disbelief, because otherwise we don't get the cool moment where I actually teared up. Or maybe not teared up, got misty-eyed the first time I watched it. Like, I had no idea there was more than 2 California classes. And also, like, all these people I don't care 2 things about show up to save the Lower Decks, I was going to say, the Cerritos. Yeah, it was just a fun moment, and they got to kind of play with the Picard thing of like a million ships show up that look exactly the same.
Yeah, ever since I was a little kid, I've been a sucker for a lot of small players all arrive and stand up at the last minute and defeat a larger foe than them.
Yeah,
like there was
Star Wars to do it.
But like there was an episode or a movie of remember Herbie the Love Bug?
I don't remember
which movie it was, but like there was one episode where like all these other cars suddenly become sentient and they all rush to his rescue. Or the movie Bedknobs and Broomsticks, where the Nazis are invading England and this guy turns into a rabbit and makes all these living suits of armor come to life and defeat the Nazis. I'm like, that stuff is just great. I love that stuff. And so, yes, I totally understand you being misty at this.
Yeah, I mean, they did it in Star Trek, or not, sorry, Star Wars 9. A bunch of people come to go save all the Death Star ships or defeat all the Death Star ships the Emperor has at the end of there. You see a bunch of familiar faces there.
Oh, yes, yes.
In Doctor Who, one of the anniversary episodes, we get all, at that point we were on it was one of the anniversary one when they got to go save Gallifrey, and they were using the TARDIS to do some computational study, and Doctor's like, you could say I've been doing this all my lives, and then like each Doctor shows up on the screen, and you think they're done because like we just got through 12, and then all of a sudden the eyes appeared, no, 13, and then we get Capaldi, who wasn't even the Doctor yet. That was a huge one.
Aw, I love it.
So yeah, that always works on me.
Or even in the TNG episode, I think the name of the episode is The Defector, where Picard is in the neutral zone and he's being faced by 2 Romulan warbirds. And then all of a sudden 3 Klingon warbirds decloak. And Picard's like, shall we die together? I was like, oh, I love it. I just love it when people do that. However, it was at the end of season 1 of Lower Decks that we saw a ship swoop in to save the Cerritos
Yeah, we
at
had
the
a
last
Titan
minute.
there.
Yeah. And so 2 out of 3 season finales have involved somebody else showing up at the last minute to save the Cerritos.
Because you had a second class ship. Someone's got to do it.
I suppose. But I really liked the end of season 2 where they were the ones who swooped in to save somebody else. I would like to see more of that.
And this is the first one where we don't get a cliffhanger in like, oh, the captain's been arrested, or oh, such thing. Like, there's a cliffhanger, but in the same way where I'm like, oh, how are they going to resolve this in 30 seconds in the next season?
We'll have to wait and see.
Although there isn't one. There wasn't one. There's nothing to wait and see for.
But there will be a 4th season.
Yes, but there's nothing to resolve in 30 seconds.
Other than Badgie.
Sorry, I mean, I didn't get the point across. In the last few seasons, there was something like, oh no, how are they going to resolve this bad thing? And then you're like, Bree, what do you think? How are they going to resolve this? And I'm like, I don't know. And then it never mattered because they resolve it in the first 30 seconds of the first episode.
What was the thing at the end of season 1?
I'm drawing a blank right now, but there was something. It probably had to do with the Pac-Leds. I mean, season 2, the
Pac-Led planet blew up and the captain got arrested. I don't remember a season 1 cliffhanger.
That's a problem for future S. Boimler was promoted and went to Titan. He was off the ship.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And in this season, we saw his twin, quote unquote, die.
Yes, he did.
When they said how he died, I was like, that is not something that should happen on a modern starship. Shouldn't they have carbon monoxide detectors that pick up on gas leaks? How was it again? Oh, it was just like he died in his sleep because some gas in his bunk or something. But of course, he didn't die. He's Section 31.
Well, he's off screen, so yeah.
What do you mean?
He died off screen. He died off screen, so there's always a chance he can come back.
Well, he didn't die.
Well, that you just said he did.
Boimler believes that his twin died because that was the official story. But then we saw that he faked his own death in order to join Section 31.
I remember now. Okay.
Which I think is a tie-in to the non-canon Enterprise novels, because that's what they say happened to Trip Tucker at the end of season 4 of Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
He faked his death in order to join Section 31.
It could be.
But if you're supposed to be secret, why do you have different comm badges? I mean, they're making fun of Discovery with that, which I love.
Oh, they absolutely are.
Yeah. Because it's a really good question. Section 31 is the least secretive secret organization there is.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I just remembered. One more thing. I forget already which episode it was. But when they were doing the what was it called? Like the Project Swing By. That's what it was. So
Mhm.
trusted sources. Well, first of all, when they went to the planet Ornara, which was in TNG with the drug addicts, it was so weird because, like, remember how you and I had watched the TOS episode Balance of Terror, and then they redid it in Strange New Worlds like
Uh-huh,
a month later? I had just rewatched that episode of TNG like a week earlier.
uh-huh.
And so they immediately went back. So that was an odd synchronicity. But the second thing is, in the first time that planet showed up in TNG, Picard said, I can't interfere with you because you're not Federation planets, and therefore the Prime Directive applies, or something like that. That's why I can't give you these parts to repair your starship. But then in Project Swing By, they go by and they say, hey, tell us what you need, and we'll install it for you. I'm like, what's changed?
It was already interfered with. I don't know. It's I don't honestly.
I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that the Prime Directive applies only when it's convenient for the plot.
Exactly. I mean, that's the ultimate answer, right?
Yeah. Kind of like how some ships have plot armor.
Uh-huh. Until they get a movie.
You know, I've said this before, but it reminds me of when the Lord of the Rings movies came out. There is a website, moviemistakes.com, I think. And it details all the minute things that go wrong. Like, oh, in this scene, he's wearing this, but in the next scene, he's wearing this other thing. Or in the background, you can see a car driving by during Lord of the Rings or whatever. And I love that stuff. Like, I just think it's so great that people are so so detail oriented and paying attention to these things, and they document it. And it's like an Easter egg in every scene that I get to look for. And so I showed this Lord of the Rings entry to a friend of mine who's a huge Tolkien fan. And she said people like that disgust me. The people who compile this website, because she saw it as people trying to tear down her favorite movie by pointing out everything that's wrong with it. And I was like, in my opinion, the people who document all these discrepancies, they don't do that unless they love the movie.
That's like I criticize Threshold, or I can criticize Star Trek all day long, but I love it.
Right. Yeah, and it's like when I say, hey, the Prime Directive is very inconsistent here, I'm not saying that to tear it down. I was like, I love Star Trek, and I can't help but notice like all these things about it, because if I didn't love it, I would just turn it off, and I wouldn't pay attention, and I wouldn't be so detail-oriented.
So. You know, for me, all that stuff is, I do enjoy finding those things, but when people start acting like a show is bad because of it, or, you know, like treating like no knowledge of that is valid critique, that's when it just kills the interest for me.
Oh yeah, like kind of like how some gamers are like, oh, this World War II simulator is inaccurate because it's not historically accurate. Oh, but I love the zombie mode.
Yeah. I think Cinema Sins is one of the worst things that culture has ever brought to humanity.
Cinema Sins?
It's a YouTube channel where they count all the things wrong, and I think it has made too many people think that they are movie critics because they notice a flaw, and not because of the content of this film. That's not saying critique is bad. It's just this kind is useless.
You know, I knew somebody who actually got a master's degree in film critique, which is a particularly challenging career path because there are not a lot of openings for critics like at major outlets, and when that position is filled, it tends to stay filled for a long time. But that's my point, actually, is that not just anybody can be a film critic. Like, anybody can start a blog and talk about movies. I have done exactly that. That is how I got started with WordPress. And I'm not criticizing my own pursuit of telling people what I think about movies, but that's not what a film critic does.
Right.
And having a YouTube channel does not a film critic make.
Right.
So.
Right. So we are over the halfway mark. Should we talk about the other Star Trek series? So is there any way you want to wrap up with Lower Decks before we continue on?
Well, one brief segue, which is, I love how rapidly Boimler named off all the California-class ships.
Oh my god, that scene was amazing.
It's better with subtitles, because then you get to actually see where everything is. Like what cities they were.
And he did almost all that in one breath.
Yeah. Well, he had to. They were showing up so quickly. So one of the ships was the Riverside. And I am recording this podcast with you from Riverside, California.
Does it
So
feel like a
there's this.
second-class city?
I haven't been here long enough to say, but every time I tell people I'm moving to Riverside, they're like, "Oh, why?"
Yeah, sounds like it's a second-class city.
Yeah. They're like, "I hope you're not expecting much, Ken." I was like, "Oh, thanks." But the last time you and I spoke, we talked about how I had met William Shatner in Ticonderoga, New York. What I neglected to share on that podcast that you and I recorded was I met him on a Saturday.
Uh-huh.
On Sunday, I drove from Vermont to Buffalo, New York. On Monday, I drove from Buffalo to Chicago, Illinois. And on Tuesday, I drove from Chicago to Kansas City. From Chicago to Kansas City, there are basically two routes. Roughly, one goes through St. Louis, Missouri. The other goes through Des Moines, Iowa. I am accustomed to the former route, and I was inclined to stick with what I know, but I went with the latter through Des Moines because if I just made like a 40-minute detour, I would stop through Riverside, Iowa, which I did, which is the future birthplace of Captain Kirk.
You saw the massive pits that they have there that you can fly cars off of.
It's true. It's true. I mean, they were building the Enterprise while I was there. It was
It's
shocking.
incredible. It's going to take that long.
So they do have a statue that is erected, supposed to look like Captain Kirk. It doesn't look like him, and it's a lot shorter. Like I've seen, like I know how tall William Shatner is, and this statue is smaller than him.
Probably going to be very mad it's smaller than the Kate Mulgrew one.
It probably is. I haven't been to that one, although I do want to go to it in Bloomington, Indiana. Down the street, there is a plaque that says "Future Birthplace of Captain Kirk," and it's like in an alley between two buildings. So I guess the theory is that in the future there'll be a hospital on that site. But the alley is behind a bar, and if you go into the bar, they have a plaque that says "Future Point of Conception of Captain Kirk." It's not official, I guess, and I think it was originally on the floor under a pool table, based on pictures I saw online. But now it's just on a shelf behind the bar,
against the Pac-Man machine.
right? And across the street from the statue is an actual museum, which is pretty neat. A lot of it's just paraphernalia, like autographed photos and stuff like that. But they have all the Star Trek shows, including Discovery. And they have, from TNG, whenever Data was in his quarters and he had this like really big desk that he would sit at, that desk is now in Riverside, Iowa, which is pretty cool.
Fantastic.
One thing that was weird, though, was I walked in, I was wearing my disco shirt, the same disco shirt you have. And the guy sitting behind the counter looks at me and says, "You have a lot of nerve walking in here with that. Disco sucks." And I was like, when you walk in, the very first thing you see is a display dedicated to Star Trek Discovery. And so I said to him, "What are you talking about? You have a Discovery display right here." And he just says, "Disco sucks." And there was another tourist there, and they said, "You know that disco is short for Discovery, right? Not the dance?" And I'm not sure if the guy behind the counter actually knew that, because like he seemed to demur a little bit once he heard that. I'm not sure if he was just like backing down from criticizing a tourist, or if he was actually realizing, the dance sucks. Either way,
I thought you were going to go with like he was like just laying it on thick for a good joke, and then I didn't expect the story to end that way.
If he was trying to tell a joke, there was no punchline. It was, and even if he thought the dance that I like sucks, that's a really weird way to treat a tourist.
Yep.
So, but otherwise, it was great. And at the recommendation of former Transporter Lock guest Susan Arndt, I did drive down Main Street blasting Sabotage.
And then all the buildings blew up as they were their connection was controlled.
Extremely sensitive to sound.
Yeah, the beats and shouting.
It's true. Riverside just couldn't stand it. It's so shocking, really. So that was my experience in Riverside, Iowa, and here I am now in Riverside, California.
All right, with that great segue, let's talk a few minutes about Prodigy.
Yeah, so this is still season 1 somehow, which premiered earlier this year. We're now on season 1, episode 11, Asylum, and season 1, episode 12, Let Sleeping Borg Lie. And by the way, I hate it when they put spoilers right in the title. But anyway, you know me, the spoilers. Asylum and Sleeping Borg Lie. I'm very interested in your take because I know that you've been lukewarm on Prodigy in the past. But one thing I want to say is Asylum aired the same night as the Lower Decks finale, and those two have never overlapped before, as far as I know. Going right from one animation style to the next
I
was
suppose.
rough. That's rough.
You know, I feel like I may have said something like that in the past. Oh no, but I did about different shows. Like one started when one ended. Oh, Discovery and Picard. That's what it was, or something like that. Like the contrast is like, no, you need time to separate these.
Yeah, like I like this week watching the second episode of Prodigy, I liked it more. But last week I was like, I feel like I'm watching a cutscene from a 1990s CD-ROM game.
Beast Wars.
Hey, don't knock
Transformers
Beast
Beast
Wars.
Wars.
I love Beast Wars.
Who was knocking it?
And Reboot, good stuff.
Who was knocking Reboot? 99, 99, 99.
So yeah, what do you think of Prodigy?
It's a Star Trek show, I guess. I'm still lukewarm on it. Nothing like you probably recall. Like it got me more interested by the end, but that's because I binged some of it while doing some other stuff. Once the show has already caught up, and like I am still like, oh, okay, I guess there's a new one this week. It just does not catch me at all. I still hate Doll. I think his name is Doll, our main kid character, who they call himself Captain.
He does seem to be playing less of a role as the season goes on.
Yeah, he's still my least favorite.
But I thought that might enamor you to the show more.
Now, the only parts that are interesting to me are actual Admiral Janeway and Chakotay, and the girl who has the cool morphing weapon thing.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't those are the only three characters I think are neat in here.
You don't like hologram Janeway?
I didn't say don't like, just those three I mentioned are my favorite, like only ones I'm interested in. Like, and this Borg episode was so underwhelming to me. I like online, a lot of people loved it. I was like, wow, this is so underwhelming.
People loved it? Why?
Yeah. People just loved the story. They thought it was so cool. It made the Borg scary again, which I did think it was cool that they added non-humanoid or traditional humanoid, but had Borg. But there's some neat things in there. But I was like bored.
I thought it was neat that they actually flew the ship right into the Borg ship. We've never seen that before, other than the Voyager Endgame.
Yeah. What's our Medusan name again?
Zero.
I like Zero to a point, but then like this whole like neat idea of assimilating a Medusan, but also I felt like that needed an extra episode or two to work through their feelings and work through their problem. It was not enough time. It's a kids show, so okay.
Yeah, I have never really liked the concept of like, oh, my friend is still in there, and if I just say the right words, I can get them to come out. You know, like the final season of She-Ra did that, and then they did it this season with Zero. Like, Zero, this is not who you are. You don't hurt people, and boom, she unassimilates herself.
Kids show, and maybe Medusans are able to hold off on that.
I mean, it's true that different species get assimilated differently. We saw the Denobulan, Dr. Phlox, was able to stop and reverse the process before it was complete on himself. But like Medusans, they're non-corporeal, and also they are so powerful that you would think that, and also the Borg knew what species they were, so you think that assimilating one of them would be like very advantageous. And also, two other things. One is, I too forget the female protagonist's name, which is awful, but she was told like, oh, as long as you're non-threatening, they won't try to assimilate you. But on the other hand, the Borg are very interested in biological distinctiveness, and her species is unknown. So you think that the Borg would be like, we don't care if you're non-threatening, we want whatever you are.
Star Trek's not always the most consistent show in the world. Gwendala.
That's right.
they touched on some of the classic Borg, right? When in TNG first met them, where the Borg were. They touched on some of that, but also made it look like the Voyager Borg. It's like, yeah, I mean, okay, it's a kids show. We gotta simplify this also because we only have 24 minutes to tell our story. It's like, okay.
Right, which is one of the things that we talked about with Kraft and Tiffany when they were on the show previously, which is that you and I are not really the target audience for this show. And I'm criticizing it as if we were the target audience.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we probably don't have a lot of kids listening to this podcast either.
Not too many. And so like we had talked before this, like you were recording, what are we going to talk about? And I was like, you mentioned, do you want to do Prodigy? Like, well, we could see how I'm feeling about it, I guess. Because like before, I'm like, I had no interest in talking about it, and honestly, I still don't. I will watch it if I remember it's on, but like Prodigy is, or if I catch on the internet that something interesting happened between the Chakotay Janeway story. I might catch up on that then. Oh, I might rush to catch that up, but Prodigy doesn't interest me at all.
Yeah, for me, it's such a low investment. Like, if it was an hour-long show every week, I might feel more similarly to you. But, my Thursday nights are pretty light. I can give it a half an hour of my time or less without commercials because I'm still paying for Paramount Plus Premium or whatever.
Yeah. And it's cool. Now we know that there's a Delta Quadrant space station, a communication station. Poor guy who was on there, though, just before all the events of the episode happening, just one single guy out there. Good thing he had a holodeck.
However, this weapon that is on the Protostar, I thought it would be more virus-like it would infect Starfleet. But when it infected this communications array, it didn't then travel to any of the other stations or ships that station was in communication with.
Maybe, yeah. Either it only moves as fast as it needs to for plot, or it has some weaknesses.
Yeah.
That we don't know yet.
And also, when they talked about going on the Borg ship to find a way to destroy the weapon, like, the first thing in my mind was, if the Borg assimilate that weapon, Starfleet is screwed. And that's exactly what the Borg said that they were going to do.
Yep.
And so you would think that hologram Janeway, yes, she's a hologram, but she's based on Janeway, which has a lot of Borg experience. And she didn't warn them about this at all. She didn't say, hey, they might get your weapon. Like, yeah, she said, I advise against this course of action. But she didn't say, you might make things worse for Starfleet instead of better.
She's like, you know what, kids, we've got 17 minutes left. I can tell you why not, or you can find out why not yourself. What will you want to choose? And they're like, we want to find out ourselves. And they run off.
Well, I was kind of laughing when she said, I advise against this course of action, but let me tell you everything I know. And I'm like, 3 hours later, because Janeway knows a lot about the Borg.
Just the montage of her and the.
I would love a montage. That would be fantastic. Like, she pulls out a dry erase board and she's diagrams, puppets.
But then Dowell would have been like, okay, that's nice. See you, Janeway. And Jankum would be like, Jankum doesn't want to do this, but Jankum will do it anyway.
Now, see, despite not liking the show, you do very good impressions of it.
Thank you. It's very easy to do Tellarite. The Tellarite here does not insult anybody. Come on,
I was just thinking that. Yeah, like when he said, hey, I'm one of the founders of the Federation, I was like, really? Really? Because you seem pretty amicable.
However, it's probably good that we don't have a Tellarite insulting everyone, because then you teach a bunch of kids. It's okay to surround like, you moron, you're an idiot, but I love you. I mean, things like that.
A friend of mine brought her kids to see the first Frozen. And one of the lessons that kid took away from the movie was conceal, don't feel. And we're like, did you watch the movie and see how damaging that was and how she overcame that philosophy for the benefit of her and her loved ones? They're like, no, what she got out of it was conceal, don't feel. It's like, yeah, sometimes kids get the wrong lesson because it's a little too deep for them. Now, granted, that kid was on the younger side. Just like she wasn't bringing her 21-year-old daughter to a movie like, oh, conceal.
That's what I got away from it, too. What are you talking about?
Right. Well, okay. That's fair. We should talk, but okay.
Anything more you want to talk about Prodigy?
No.
We have some other topics you want to talk about. And I also, I guess I realized now while we were talking, I did have something Star Trek to talk about.
I have something to talk about. It's related to Janeway.
Go for it. Mine's
Okay.
related to disco.
Oh, okay. So, also in my nomadic journey, on my way to Riverside, California, just this week, my route here took me through Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I have driven through Las Vegas before on my travels, and every time I make just one stop, and that is at the Pinball Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm. Great
It
place.
is, yeah, you've been there?
Oh, multiple times.
Oh, good. Yeah, they moved to a new location April of 2021. It's even bigger now.
It's closer to the strip.
Yes, I think so. And on this visit, I saw something I saw many games I'd never seen before because it's that kind of museum. But in particular, relevant to this podcast, I saw something I'd never seen before, which was the Star Trek Voyager arcade game.
Oh wow, I haven't seen that forever.
It's a light gun game.
Yeah, you shoot the Borg if I recall correctly.
Exactly. So the Borg invade Voyager, and you go. It's just like any other shooting game, like House of the Dead. They take tons of shots. They come in all different sizes, and they shoot phasers, and they try to claw at you. And a lot of light gun games, the game says reload, and you have to point off screen, pull the trigger, and that reloads you. Well, phasers don't run out of energy, but you still have to have that mechanic in the game because it's a trope at this point. And so the game says, instead of reload, it says remodulate because it's the Borg. So you
Beautiful.
point your phaser off screen, pull the trigger, and of course the weapon you're holding doesn't look like a phaser. It looks like a light gun, like every other game.
I forgot all about that game. I played it before.
I didn't know
It's
it
just been a
existed.
while. I forgot about its existence entirely.
I had no idea this was a thing. Or maybe I did 20 years ago, but I've never seen it. Yeah, it's hard. I didn't get very far.
Those games are coin eaters. They're meant to be.
I mean, I'm pretty good at Time Crisis, but this game, there was no hiding mechanic. The story was very light, of course.
They might have cranked the difficulty too.
That's possible. The Borg took I could unload a full phaser into a Borg and it kept coming. I had to reload just to get rid of one enemy. But it was so funny because at one point you're on the bridge and Tuvok is just at his console doing his thing and you're supposed to stop the Borg from getting at him. And I was like, is he trying to actually enact some tactical response through his console, or is he just trying to do his job and ignore the Borg?
If I can't see them, if I don't perceive them.
Right. It's like a little kid. Maybe if you just ignore them, they'll go away or something. Daddy's trying to work. Go away, Borg. So I'll drop in the show notes a YouTube video I found that has all the gameplay from this game. The photos that I took are not very good, so I'll rely on this third party. But yeah, that was an interesting discovery, no pun intended, that I had.
Well, that's a great segue. I've been rewatching season 2 of Discovery. I mentioned I started that months and months ago, and I finally just made a huge stretch while I was doing some other work. And I've always remembered season 2 being kind of middling. I don't remember why I remember thinking that. Honestly, I just don't remember. But I actually really enjoyed it. I still think Discovery is way better as a binge show, not a week to week. That show is meant to be binged.
Interesting.
The absolute worst of the series is still Ash Tyler. I hate that character so much. Yep. And they made allusions to that. He's coming back for Section 31 if they ever make that show. I hope they decide not to.
Well, he was left in charge of Section 31.
Yeah. I hope they change their mind. Or they recast, or they give that actor a new character, because maybe Zach Tyler. I don't know. Just Ash Tyler is the worst character. I like him less than Alan Meringue. Count to 4. Alan Meringue. Then 3 more. I hate him more than Threshold. I don't even hate Threshold. I hate him more than the Chula Move Along Home. Oh my god, I hate that character so much. That's my takeaway from season 2. Everything was pretty good except for him.
I agree with you on Zac Efron or whatever his name is, but season 2, I remember when we were doing the podcast every single week, and I remember saying to you in the penultimate episode, the second to last episode of season 2.
That word I do know.
Okay, just checking. I remember saying on this podcast that I did something that I had never done before in Discovery, which was rewatch the episode immediately, because I liked that episode so much. And that's the only episode of Discovery besides the Groundhog Day episode that I've gone back and rewatched. I really want to go back and rewatch the last 2 episodes of season 2 back to back, exactly what you're doing,
Mhm.
binging, because that was definitely a two-parter. I mean, I know the whole series is serial, but those 2 episodes, like the first one is all talk and the second one is all action. And when you pair them together, they come out balanced.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if you watch one by one, it's like too much of this, too much of that. So that's something I want to do in my copious spare time, is just watch not the whole season, just those 2
Just those 2
episodes.
episodes. Yeah, there's a man, I was talking to Shar, I was like, "Man, they in the next to last episode, they used magnetism to kill the AI that was chasing after Spock and Burnham, and I can't believe they didn't do that for Leland here when he got to Discovery." Then I'm watching more like, "Oh wait, that's exactly how they kill him too."
Yep. And they
I just
learned from the
entirely
first
forgot.
time.
I
Yep.
entirely forgot. Anyway, we are running low on time, and there's a topic you want to talk about.
One more topic, which is Marina Sirtis, who played Counselor Deanna Troi on TNG and Picard and Lower
And
Decks
Voyager.
and Voyager. Good point. She has left Twitter. If you go to her Twitter account, it's actually not there anymore. The complete archive is gone. The reason she gave for doing so was Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, which at the time of this recording happened a week ago. As of this morning, on Friday, November 4th, about 25% of the staff has been laid off, including some IRL friends of mine. So there are a lot of changes coming to Twitter, and I was wondering what that means for you and me.
I haven't made a decision yet. Kind of watching this whole thing burn. And see how things go. I have a feeling Elon's gonna be like, he's already like, what have I done? But honestly, I'm waiting to see how this goes. If I have to make another IRC channel talk about Star Trek, I'm pretty sure I will.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do either, because I have, like, you and I each have our personal accounts. I have a second personal account, and then you and I share the Transporter Lock account. So if I do leave, I will not delete my accounts like Marina did. I will stop posting to them. I have one friend who never posts to Twitter. Like, they used to, and then out of protest they stopped, but they still log in and read other people's content.
Mhm.
So they can see what's trending or whatever and stay up on the latest memes. I don't know that I could do that and have the restraint to not reply. That would be hard, because like you and I and Susan aren't, like, we're always chatting amongst each other, and Amanda, who have all been on the show. I was like, how can I see something Amanda says and just like ignore it? I'd rather just not see it in the first place almost. But yeah, I don't know. I think if they make me start paying $8 a month to keep my blue check mark, I'm not doing that. That's absurd.
Uh-huh.
But
Or
you know what?
40 or 20 or whatever they were talking about. Like,
Yeah, it
whatever decides.
changes. But yeah, I think you said Elon Musk might realize that he made a mistake. I don't know that that's in his personality to
No,
admit a
that's not.
mistake.
I think best case scenario is he sells it back for pennies on what he he bought it for.
Well, that kind of happened with Tumblr. You
Yep.
know, it went
Yep.
for a lot of money, and then 3 years ago, the company I now work for bought it for about the same price as a New York City penthouse apartment,
Mhm.
which compared to the original value was a lot less. Running social media companies are really hard. There's this great article called "Welcome to Hell, Elon."
Yeah, that was a great article.
Yeah, I love it because it basically says that Twitter doesn't have a technology issue, which is something that Elon is really good at with Tesla and SpaceX. What Twitter has is a content moderation issue, and you need to moderate the content in order to attract advertisers. And that's true, but this assumes that Elon Musk is at all concerned about money. And I don't know that he's expecting an ROI on a $44 billion investment. I think he did this for other reasons. And I'm not sure that recouping that investment is important to him.
Mhm. Yeah.
So like he's already saying on Twitter that activist groups have driven away advertisers.
Yeah,
And,
he's saying that, and he got fact check.
yeah, he did. He's not taking into account that there's been a 500% increase in the use of certain words
Mhm,
since his
mhm.
purchase, and those words are the kinds of words that drive off advertisers. So if you had to go somewhere else, I know you mentioned IRC.
I
Besides
don't
that, is there anywhere else you would
I
go?
don't have a fallback. I am on Instagram. but I usually a consumer and not a. Maybe I would talk more there, but it's another Facebook company. There's TikTok. That all has all its own interesting, unique problems. I've never posted there before ever. I have a Discord server. Maybe I could add a Star Trek channel. I mean, those are those are free. So but uh, bring back BBSs.
Ha! I love it. Well,
that's how I've got my internet start.
I was actually thinking about this today. That BBS is, I think the modern equivalent is Mastodon. Because each one is run by its own administrator who has their own rules and can read your DMs. Just like a BBS.
I suppose. So to the answer, like, I don't know. Maybe social media is just done for me. Other than Twitter, on Facebook, I don't post anything there anymore. I go there maybe once a month to see what, if I remember it. But I'll figure that out if I even want it in my life.
Yeah, it's hard to envision a world without Twitter. I mean, I know most of our lives have been spent not on Twitter, but like for you and me, it's the main way we communicate.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd have to switch to something else. I have other tools I use for one-on-one communication, like Signal, but that's not a social media app. I like Reddit, and I post a lot
I
there.
use that a lot. I guess that's social media.
Yeah, but Reddit is about topics, not personalities. You don't follow personalities on Reddit, so that's a different model. If I want to start using a service that I don't already use, which I think is the closest analog to Twitter, it would probably be Tumblr.
Yeah, I guess I have an account there, but I don't use it for those features either.
Yeah,
I use it to look at Korasami shipping art.
like I use it to post photos of me and dogs, but that's it. And that's not what I use Twitter for. So I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for us. For now, you can still find us on Twitter.
Yeah.
And if something goes awry, we will let people know.
Absolutely.
But I will. One more thing. I saw somebody criticizing Marina Sirtis. They quoted back at her a tweet of hers from 5 years ago saying, "I'm going to buy a Tesla." And now she's saying, "I'm leaving Twitter because of Elon Musk."
Burn! They got her good.
I was like, you know what? 5 years ago, I wanted a Tesla, and Elon Musk has done a lot of things in the last 5 years to make me not want a Tesla. I see no discrepancy there.
Yep. And it's almost like sometimes people can change in 5 years, change their mind.
It's like when you know better, you do better. And so when more information becomes available, you act on that.
Hey, remember this thing you said 35 years ago? How about now, huh?
Every single night before I go to bed, I'm thinking about the stupid things I said 35 years ago. I don't need Twitter reminding me. Well, anything else?
That's all I got. I'm still meh on Prodigy. Love Lower Decks. And it's going to be a while before we get some live action Trek.
One thing we didn't talk about is there were some trailers that came out that I didn't watch, such as for the 3rd season of Picard.
Yeah, you didn't see how beep, and you didn't see beep, and beep.
Is it something you want to talk to our listeners about? Because I can take off my headset.
I have other ways to do that if I want.
Okay. Well, in that case, I guess this is it for this week. Wasn't there something else I wanted? Oh, I wanted to apologize if there were any awkward pauses on my side or any coughing. Both of those are because I'm getting over COVID. And so I tried to mute on and off throughout the episode. And I just don't have the patience to go back and edit all that. So
I did not hear a single cough.
Well, good. But there were probably some pauses. So I hope it just came across as thoughtful.
Yes.
Well, on that happy note, I wish good health to all our listeners. We might not talk to you again until after American Thanksgiving. Remember to fall back your clocks this coming weekend. And until then,
we got to get that warp core so we can get out of here. And then we can hit it.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter @TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.